Hello, and welcome to the latest in our series of video lectures and lessons into the Junior Cert History course. And today's lesson is on the subject of Rome. Rome is an important subject because it lays the foundations for everything else, not just in our course, but in our society. Our system of laws, government, culture, knowledge, even the language that you're listening to and comprehending this right now is derived from Latin. So, let's take a deep dive into this, shall we, and see what we can learn from it and what points we need to know about the Junior Cert. So, before you start with anything else, it's important to have your own background knowledge of Rome. Now, we know Rome's foundation story, and you have the myth of Romulus and Remus, and you also would have the myth of Rome being born out of the fall of Troy. But what we have historically is Rome was formed in the 8th century, and the city of Rome itself was formed around 7 hills by the Tiber. Now, the Tiber is the river around Rome, and it's surrounded by these 7 hills. And this is when Rome was founded in the year 753 BC. Now, it's not as nice and it's a lot more practical than the Troy and Romulus and Remus myth, but these are the facts. So, Rome would conquer the known world, would be the guardians of the world, would be the police of the world, would bring culture, civilization, and what they believed was their own form of democracy to the world, until the empire properly collapsed around 476. But for around 1100 years, Rome was the empire. Rome was the world. Rome was the force that dominated, the force that controlled the empire. And what we have here is a map of Rome at the time. And everywhere that we see in red was the Roman Empire. It was conquered by Rome, and it was, as we said, the known world. You notice there's bits of Africa missing, there's no America, there's no Canada, a lot of Asia is missing, and everything else that the Romans saw outside of the red was either unconquerable or not worth conquering. So what will you need to know for the Junior Cert? So before we start going through what you need to know, what I would say is, because this channel also does videos on Latin and Roman civilization for those Latin course and Latin students, this is an invaluable opportunity to go back and to watch all these other videos in more detail, because what they do is, when you study Latin or when you study history, or if you just have an interest in ancient Rome, the other videos that we have on the Latin course will delve into everything I talk about here today in much greater detail. So this is just a general overview. If you're looking at this in regards to your Junior Cert, you're talking about a people in history question realistically. So for Roman Domus, the Domus was where the wealthy lived. It was normally outside of Rome due to spatial constraints, and it was big, it was grand. So know about the rooms, the halls, the atrium, the kitchen, the garden. Have their Latin names, and explain why they're important and how it was part of the patrician or the wealthy class. Now, insula translates as island, and the islands that we're talking about here are the little apartments, and this would have normally been populated by the poor or the plebeian class. Now, what you can see from the diagram here is that the higher up you were, the less space there was, and therefore the higher up you were, the less room there was, and the poorer you were. So, just looking at this diagram, and again, go back and watch my videos titled on the Domus and the Insulae, because you'll have more detail on this. The middle floor with the big apartment was normally for senators or rich people who were working in the city and needed a place to stay during the week while they were working. And then as you got higher and higher up, the poor lived up there. The ground floor had also been shops, bars, restaurants, and just having a look here, you'll notice there's no storage, there's no running water. Because Rome was the first city with a population of 1 million people, these insulas sprung up quickly and all over the city. Now, the problem was they were unsafe, they were wooden built, so if fire started, and as you can see there's no chimneys or anything, the fire would have spread because the apartments are built up on top of one another, and also because the need for space, or the need for living accommodation was so great in Rome, they were often thrown up quickly, and because they weren't built on the proper foundations, they often collapsed just as quickly. Colosseum. know about the amphitheatre, know about the gladiator games. So the Colosseum is the best example in Rome, but these Colosseums were all over the empire and they were called amphitheatres. So they would have been common as football stadiums today. The Colosseum could hold around 50,000 people. It was the centerpiece of Rome, right in the middle of the forum. But again, every city would have had this the same way every town would have a football stadium now. Gladiators were trained, they were either captured slaves or they were criminals. They were sent to training schools, so there were stables the same way. If you think of modern MMA or modern boxing, that everyone trains in their own fight gym and their own stable that they work in. And the other interesting thing that you should notice about the Colosseum, which we'll go into in greater detail in our Colosseum and Gladiator video, is about this Naumachia. And what the Naumachia was that the Colosseum, the bottom floor could be filled with water, and there'd be naval battles inside. Absolutely spectacular to even comprehend how they would do that today. You also look at the different types of gladiators. So we have 4 different types here. We have a Samnite, we have a Murmillo, we have a Thracian, and we have a Rhetorius. And what's interesting about these is, if you notice, they all have different weapons. They're all armed differently. And this is important too for variety. Okay? They were specially trained in these schools. We said they were slaves or criminals. They fought against themselves. They fought against animals. They had the Naumachia when they were fighting with their stables against other stables in other schools. They had different weapons like swords, nets, tridents, shields, daggers. And again, it depends on what you specialised in. It's like the idea, if you think of modern MMA now or modern UFC, how you'd have a boxer fighting a martial artist. Or you'd have a wrestler fighting a person who's trained in jiu-jitsu. It's all about these different styles, and it was these different styles and the kind of debate about who would win is what made it interesting. It's no more different than people talking about today, who would win in a fight between someone like Conor McGregor or who would win and any other fighter in any other sport. So it was just about this combination of styles. Yeah, the Circus Maximus. Okay? The Circus Maximus, again, wasn't far from the Colosseum, was also in the centre of Rome, but look at the size of that. Now, we have a races and games video that I will go into, where you can elaborate on this a bit further. And this is the Circus Maximus as it is in Rome today. Now, chariot racing was the most popular sport in Rome, okay? It held 250,000 people, which even in today's standards, the largest stadiums in the world don't hold that. It is incredible to think about. And the 4 main teams in Rome were red, green, blue and white. So you've all seen chariot racing scenes in some shape or form, most notably probably in a film like Ben-Hur. With these 4 teams though, it was very it was almost more like a kind of a soccer style atmosphere than a horse racing atmosphere. Yes, they raced and yes, they ran chariots, but the way the fans were fanatical, dressing up in their club colours, following their favourite riders, they're going to see them in races. It would have been equivalent to soccer, going to see your favourite team or your favourite player, or even if you're, I suppose, modern F1, you're going to support the red team, going to watch Ferrari and hoping Ferrari would defeat Mercedes. It's that type of equivalent. And we know that they're fanatical because there's examples and left behind and there's stories about one event in the Empire where the result of a race didn't please the fans and there was rioting that went on for over a week. If you're talking about Roman entertainment, we'll talk about the Roman bathhouses. Again, there will be a bigger video on this in my Latin section, which I would recommend you to go back. But you're looking at the different rooms, the cold room, the warm room, the medium room, how it was used as a gym, how it was, there's an exercise area, how there's a bar and a restaurant, how these were the modern gyms, and not only were they for Romans to keep fit, but they were also to entertain themselves. It was one of the first forms of entertainment, but also it was important for hygiene. So that's all we have on this one. This is our introduction to Rome. Thank you for watching. We'll be back soon with more videos to explain, in I suppose in greater detail, about the Roman Empire, why it was so powerful, why it was so influential. I'll be back soon with more. Take care. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.